How to create SDTM specification. Number one, the foundation is what SDTM versus ADaM specifications depend on. There are few aspects like purpose, source documents, and main focus for SDTM spec and ADaM spec. Now, the purpose for SDTM spec is nothing but the standardized raw clinical data for submission, and the purpose for ADaM specs is nothing but preparing analysis ready datasets derived from SDTM. The source documents for SDTM specs creation is nothing but the annotated ACRF, SDTM IG, which is implementation guide and mapping guidelines. The source documents for ADaM specs are statistical analysis plan SAP, table listings and figures mock shells, ADaM IG, and the SDTM datasets. The main focus for SDTM specs creation is generally the data that is captured in CRF as collected. Whereas in ADaM specs, it supports the analysis as defined in the SAP. Why SAP, table listings and figures mock shells alone are not enough for ADaM specification? The SAP and table mock shells provide analysis requirements, endpoints, population, derivations, hypothesis, certain statistical methods that needs to be applied in the data. Then the structure of table listings and figures is generally in the mock shells as to a blank and a dummy table that presents that this is how we are going to generate the table listings and figures once we get the full data. But these two documents, they don't provide all the variable level details such as source variables from SDTM, then the intermediate derivations, the variable naming conventions usually comes from the CDISC guidelines, the control terminology or code list, the traceability details. Hence, we require certain additional inputs which are essential for developing the ADaM specification. So there might be some derivations that may not be incorporated in SAP, but you can mention in the SDTM and ADaM metadata so that it becomes quite feasible enough to trace that this derivation is derived from which formula and what is the source variables that has been taken from raw data to SDTM and then SDTM to ADaM. So that traceability is very essential when you work on this ADaM specs creation. Documents and inputs used to create an ADaM specification. Now there are few documents which are quite essential that needs to be used. The first is a statistical analysis plan that defines analysis endpoints, the analysis populations, whether it's going to be MITT, ITT, PP, safety, or some other subgroup analysis population, and the various statistical methods. So next is the table listings and figures mock shell. Now this provides the structure of output as to how the output is going to look like when we get the actual data, and it just provides you the empty table and it helps identify which ADaM variables are required. Now generally whenever we develop the table listings figures mock shells, the best practice is to ensure that once your SDTM and ADaM specs are ready, you usually update or annotate your mock shell as to this specific column is going to be generated from which variable, either from SDTM or from ADaM dataset. The way we annotate the CRF, we call as a annotated CRF. In that same way, you can also annotate the mock shells that annotates the specific variables that needs to be taken for generating that particular table listings and figure. So that helps identify as to correct analysis can be done. Now the SDTM specifications and datasets, they are the source of raw data and it helps to determine derivation logic and traceability. Now imagine one thing, there is a first raw data which is a source. The second is your SDTM specs, and based on those SDTM specs you convert into SDTM datasets. Now then those SDTM specs becomes the source for generating the ADaM specifications in detail, which helps in generating the analysis ready datasets, which is the ADaM dataset. So generally this is how the process it follows, and the traceability, it should be like, say for example, in ADaM data sets, you will have the minimum age. Now that minimum age, when you do the summary statistics, that minimum age value should be present in SDTM. Also, it should be present in the raw data. So this is how you can go back, forward and backward to check the traceability. Now the ADaM implementation guide, it defines the standard data structures like say ADSL, ADAE, ADLB, ADVS and variable level standards. So this document also helps you in creating the ADaM spec. Next is your sponsor ADaM standards and library. Now reuse standard variable naming, derivations and formats. Now certain sponsors, when you work, they have their inbuilt standards and they have their inbuilt library and they have their inbuilt formats that you can use across various studies, and that can minimize the coding structure when you work as a SAS programmer or a statistician. So these sponsor developed libraries and standard, it helps you a lot, like for ensuring that your ADaM specs are created in a consistent way. The analysis data review meeting notes. Now whenever there is a review of data, whenever you present any meeting notes, so it's always better to go back and refer to your minutes of meeting, whatever that you have discussed with the sponsor, internal meeting, external meeting with the vendors. Now all these meeting notes which is there, it helps clarify the ambiguities between statisticians and programmers about how to derive specific endpoints. So this is also you can consider as an input document for creating the ADaM spec. Next is the data reviews guide. Now this document also helps ensure consistency and traceability to final outputs. Next is the steps to create the ADaM specification. Now the first step is to identify analysis datasets. Now list all the ADaM datasets that are needed. For example, ADSL is a common one. ADAE is also common because we are conducting clinical trials based on subject and the safety and the efficacy. So the safety parameters, which is ADAE, it is going to be must for each and every therapeutic area and disease. Even the vital signs, the labs and the ADTT, which generally refers to the survival analysis kind of event, time to event kind of parameter. Now these all data sets, whatever you need, it should be based on the SAP and TLFs. Now remember one thing, how you identify analysis data sets. Now this should be done based on whatever the statistical analysis plan it has been written. Like say for example, the adverse events will be summarized based on so and so, based on so and so factor. Now whatever description that is mentioned in the SAP, now say for example the basic characteristics like age, race and certain baseline endpoints will be summarized or will be uh, counts and percentage will be generated and will be presented. So this is a descriptive kind of a sentence. Now based on this descriptive sentences, you need to identify as to what all analysis data sets that you need. Now understanding this is a very important factor here, is so that you do not miss out any adult analysis data sets that you need to develop while generating the ADaM specs. Now what so happens here is the number of analysis data set, it's not going to be same for all therapeutic areas and for all therapeutic disease. The requirement based on therapeutic diseases and areas, it's going to be different for different diseases, right? It's a very common point here. So you need to first of all understand the statistical analysis plan in detail. You need to sit with that SAP and you need to understand whether I require time to event data or whether I require any other efficacy kind of for a other kind of analysis data set. So even if you feel that the statistical analysis plan is not clear, you can raise questions, you can ask queries to the sponsor so that all your questions can be answered and you identify the correct analysis data sets, right, that you need for generating the table listings and figures. So that is the first step. Now the second step is to map source SDTM domains. Now for each ADaM dataset, you need to identify certain SDTM domains, whatever that you are going to feed for generating AD, VS, that is a vital signs. So generally we need VS and ADSL. To some extent we may also require the supplemental domain, which is SUPP in case if there is a data, if it is not, then you may not generate that. Same for example in ADAE, you will require the ADSL and the AE. Now the step 3 is to define variables. Now for each variable in the ADaM dataset, you need to determine if it is copied from SDTM, whether it's going to be the traceability. Now if you're just going to copy the SDTM variables from SDTM to ADaM, now that becomes the traceability, right? So certain variables you can simply copy, but not all variables that can be copied into ADaM dataset. Only those that might be required for doing the analysis purpose. The derived calculation needed. Now there will be certain variables in ADaM datasets that you might need to derive. So calculation is needed. So you need to read the SAP and you need to also go through the mock shells to identify where all the calculation is needed and that formula whether it is presented in the SAP. If it is not, then you can clarify with the sponsor in writing in email or through meetings or with statistician or a programmer. So based on the common understanding as to how we are going to derive this specific variable, it's better to have the clarity and then go ahead and derive that specific variable. Or you can create based on the statistical logic, for example, flags or summary variables. Now next step is to document derivations. Now whatever variables that you're deriving as per the SAP, the endpoint flags, then the analysis visits, the baseline changes from baseline. Now these all you need to document, because the moment the audit comes for this specific study, you should know how the age was calculated, what was the denominator, what was the numerator. So and the percentages, they were calculated based on overall or based on treatment groups. So these all calculations, derivations, it's very important that you document somewhere. Generally we document in the ADaM specs so that it becomes very easy friendly to refer in one specific file itself. The next step is review with statistician or a biostatistician. Now you can discuss the derived variable logic to ensure consistency with analysis methodology. Now to have a better practice in place, it's always better to get those formula and the logic reviewed by the biostatistician much earlier rather than at a later stage where you have a deadline and there is a too much of differences in calculating a specific variable. So it is always better you take the biostatistician inputs as well and document that it has been reviewed by biostatistician, and we can go ahead so that everybody in the team, especially the programmers and the biostatistician, they are on the same page, so that at the later stage of the deadline you don't have any other more obstacles, so that can delay your delivery process, right? Now the next step is to validate against ADaM IG. Now ensure all required variables are included and naming conventions that follow ADaM and IG CD standards. Now you can validate these based on Pinnacle 21 kind of a software or any other softwares which you feel that is comfortable to validate. So that will help you in getting the errors and notes and fixing those issues which are not appropriate as per the CDIS guidelines. Now, there are certain tips for developing the good ADaM specifications. Number one is your include traceability. Now, this traceability, it should be like from raw data to SDTM variable, then from SDTM variable to ADaM variable, and from ADaM variable to table listings and figure output. The example which I explained above is like, say for example, the minimum age that you see in the raw data, that same should reflect in SDTM, whether it's there in ADaM and whether it's there in table listings and figures output. Now say for example the minimum age is not present just because that patient did not was not in the safety population or in the ITT or PP population or some other factor. So you need to also notice as to why it was there in raw data, but it is not there in SDTM. So there might be some other criteria also. So you need to dig into the and understand your data very precisely, so that you ensure that the data traceability is always there in every clinical trial that you work. The next is your use standard derivation templates for common variables, like say primary analysis flag, baseline flag, and the change and percentage from baseline. Now these are the common templates that variable names that are defined in the CT standards. So you can go back and refer them. So you can use these templates so that everything is consistent look along. Next is your define population flags clearly in ADSL. Now it could be your safety, ITT, and the per protocol flags. So all these definitions, it should be very clear, and whatever that is written, the definition in statistical analysis plan, the descriptive part, you should ensure that whatever description that is written in the statistical analysis plan, it should exactly match the coding, whether you have incorporated that meaning of the descriptive sentence of ITT population or a safety population in your coding, and does the meaning it is same. Now all these things you need to check very carefully. Next thing is maintain consistency across data sets. Now the treatment variables, visit definitions, etc. Now these are all variables, you need to ensure that consistency is maintained across all the data sets, whichever that are common, like say visit definitions, then the treatment variables, and many other more factors, like say you have your subject ID, unique subject ID. Now these are all primary key variables that you need to be very careful to ensure that the consistency is there across data sets, so that you don't land up in problems having merging whether horizontally or vertically. Now this is an example for an laboratory analysis dataset, which is ADLB. Now the source, it is SDTM LB plus ADSL. It can also be a supplementary LB if there are certain questions which are not falling or which cannot be placed in SDTM domain LB, right? Now the key variables here are param, eval, base, change from baseline, percentage change from baseline, visit, a visit end. There can be more other primary key variables also, so you can add into this list if you feel relevant. Then the other is the derivations, for example the change from baseline, which is eval minus baseline, then percentage change from baseline, which is change divided by baseline into 100. Now the flags which are there, AB LFL, which is equal to Y if first non-missing eval is baseline window, and the population is safety from ADSL, and the output uses mean plus or minus standard deviation of change by treatment and visit in TLF. The way you saw in developing this analysis data set of ADLB, it has various different types of variables, and their source or the derivation or their formulas are quite different as to so in order to develop the ADaM specification, it's a very tedious and a daunting job to ensure that each and every cell that you are developing, you are creating, or you are reviewing in Excel spreadsheet for the ADaM specifications ADLB, you have to review each and every cell so that each and every cell is correct and the derivations are appropriate as per the standards. Even if you are maintaining different versions, your version control also should be present. Now the summary here is the ADaM specifications are created using multiple sources like I explained, and it is not generally based on the statistical analysis plan and table listings and figures mock shells alone. Now all these information, they combine information from SAP, TLF mock shells, SDTM specifications or data sets, the ADaM IG and the sponsor standards. Now these gaps are filled through discussions with statisticians and programmers to define derivations, flags, and traceability for each analysis variable. Now, what are the gaps here? Gaps is something like, say for example, you did not understand as to how to create this variable, which is something new. Now that variable is present in the descriptive sentence in SAP. That variable is shown in the mock shell, but its derivation or its formula, nothing and nowhere it is presented in neither the any of the guideline or any of the document, and you do not know how to derive and where to put and how to put. So that is the gap. That means you need to find out what is the gap, and if you have any issues you can always discuss with your sponsor. The first step is to discuss, have an internal meeting with your colleagues. If you still do not get the answer and there is differences, you can go ahead and discuss with your manager. If you're still not convenient, you can go ahead and have a different version or a different viewpoint from the sponsor as to how you can discuss. It's always helps, like the you discuss something with the relevant people, it helps you fill up this gaps. So that's how you can create the traceability for each and every variable, especially the analysis variable, while creating the specifications for ADaM. Many thanks for watching my video and happy learning. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a feedback comment. Many thanks for your support and having great connection.